The year is 2007. Ubisoft released what was at some point a Prince of Persia game, now spun off into its own game. It has a peculiar narrative, balancing two different stories while each maintaining its intrigue. It has a movement system that let the player be truly free, to go wherever they wished, but to do so within the confines of an excellently designed playground, the world itself. It also has its own design of stealth. It relies a lot on our protagonist being one among the crowd before they strike. And then to make their escape, we once again use the aforementioned movement system. Fast forward to about 16 years. This is now 2023. The franchise is lost. In its mad dash to be something that it is not, it lost what was so special about it to begin with. It is like everything else, but nothing like itself. And after all of that, Ubisoft announced a game. A return back to the roots. A game that takes the franchise back to the Middle East where it all began. With a protagonist who is for all intents and purposes an assassin. Back to the very castle where the assassins originated. That game is Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now the big question of course is, does the game succeed in its return? But before I answer the question of whether the game succeeds or fails, it would be remiss of me to not talk about the developers. As we know that this game was developed by Ubisoft Bordeaux and with some help from other Ubisoft studios around the world. There were many people involved. And all I can really do is tip my hat off to every single one of them. I mean, I was laughing my ass off when I first heard about this return to the roots. After all, how would a game that started its life as a DLC for Valhalla, with its infamously broken everything, possibly birth a return to the roots? And yet, it produced an admirable effort which, quite honestly, defied my expectations. And for that, the devs deserve a massive applause and a hug. That being said, the rest of this video isn't going to be all sunshine and rainbows, so sorry in advance. But before I go any further though, you know the usual YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that, do that helps a lot. And also, this is going to be an entirely spoiler-free review. I'm not going to go into any story spoilers, but I will be discussing the story. So then, let's talk about the game, shall we? About this return to the roots. So we can't really talk about the return to the roots without understanding what the roots are. While Mirage is a game that tries to emulate AC1, in some ways it is actually closer to the Ezio trilogy. The main set-piece assassinations, they feel just that, set pieces. They feel like set missions with set paths while maintaining stealth with available skills and tools as you make it to the next checkpoint. It is allowing you to do anything you want as long as you can get to that checkpoint. But after that checkpoint, everything still follows the same path. In terms of its mission structure for the pivotal assassinations then, Mirage doesn't follow the Assassin's Creed 1 template. But that does not harm the game. It simply is a different approach. But the gameplay of Mirage especially makes these segments really awesome actually. Because the actual underlying stealth system is really, really good. And I'll get to that later. But what after the assassinations? Well, you run away in Assassin's Creed 1. And you better fucking run away in Mirage because picking a fight with more than 3 guards is basically a death sentence. But the crucial difference here is that while Assassin's Creed 1 offers you an excellent movement system to master and use as you please, Mirage heavily relies on its world design to make sure that there is always a straight line available to you so that you don't need to make changes in direction, you don't need to use any advanced parkouring for that matter. In contrast, Assassin's Creed 1 gives you the freedom to choose your own path. Your skill determines how fast you will be. But in Mirage, skill is not really a factor. We can only wonder just how much better Mirage could have been if it had a system similar to this. But wonder is the only thing we can do. The one thing in Mirage that does closely resemble Assassin's Creed 1 is its narrative structure. And here is where there are both significant improvements and also significant problems with Mirage's narrative. For most of Mirage's narrative, we are hunting members of the Order of the Ancients. These people, they are not Templars. If anything, what they are closely resemble the instruments of the first will, but that's besides the point. In Mirage, we have to conduct investigations similar to Assassin's Creed 1. Except Mirage finally gives us a glimpse of how much better Assassin's Creed 1 could have been if its investigations weren't as shallow and repetitive. Now don't get me wrong, Mirage isn't exactly setting the world on fire with its mission design, but with its reliance on its excellent stealth system, it can make some of those repeatable missions challenging in their own way. And as far as the challenge is concerned, I would really recommend everyone to play Mirage on high difficulty, because this is where the game honestly is at its best. The place where Mirage fails though, is to create interesting characters. Basim, Nehal and Roshan are central to the narrative and are very well written and acted, but the rest aren't particularly memorable. And even among them, Roshan was criminally underused. But the worst offenders are the Order of the Ancients. Assassin's Creed 1 had Templars doing twisted things, but in the end they were doing it for reasons they thought were justifiable. They were memorable for their personalities, even though we knew next to nothing about them, other than what they did and other than what they confessed. For the narrative of Assassin's Creed to work, it was extremely important that each of these targets tell a story. A short story, but a meaningful one. Bar that, you don't really have much in terms of narrative. Mirage fails to create this connection. You never feel any sympathy for these characters. In fact, you don't feel anything at all. I said this in my review of Assassin's Creed 1, that it shows the way people are. Flawed. Mirage just shows the Order as plain evil. You could have Deimos yelling Malaka in there and it wouldn't look out of place, other than the fact that he's a Greek demigod. And this is a fundamental failure, and this is why Mirage cannot live up to the narrative of Assassin's Creed 1, even though it does do some things right. Because Mirage, at the end of the day, does get some things right. Its story of Basim's transformation into the man we knew in Valhalla, it was intriguing, even though it was short and it wasn't as fleshed out as I would have hoped. And in typical Assassin's Creed fashion, it still leaves some unanswered questions. I wouldn't rate Mirage's narrative high on the lists, but considering the dumpster fires that we have received from Ubisoft Quebec over the years, and also the fact that Assassin's Creed Rogue exists, this is a masterpiece. So I think at this point I can conclude that while there was a valiant effort made to repackage Valhalla into a game that has at least a passing resemblance to the concept of Assassin's Creed, it is not a return to the roots. But still, Mirage is a game that is capable of standing on its own. Not as the best, definitely not as the worst, but a damn good game in its own right. So now to what makes it a good game. Well, first let's talk about how the game feels. Yeah, I know, a very objective statement. But what I'm referring here is to the general level of perceived smoothness in things like movement or animations, things like that. And the one thing I can say is that this game is smooth. Probably the smoothest we have seen in this franchise since Assassin's Creed 3. The animations just work, especially while sneaking around. And while parkour is an obvious weak spot, the world design supplements it just enough for it not to be a problem. As long as you're running in a straight line. Anything else and the illusion is shattered. But Mirage is just that, a mirage. In its core, it is a game that is derived from a game which mechanically wasn't even a good game, let alone be a good Assassin's Creed game. But goddamn is it a good Mirage. Now here's a clip of just a very small moment in stealth which happened to me while I was streaming, but a moment that made me instantly fall in love with this game. Just a quick roll to first cut the line of sight, and also while closing down the distance to the nearest cover and to the person who was spotting us, and then assassinating from the cover. That made me feel something I haven't felt in this franchise for a while. And to that add the functionality of tools, an actual functional social stealth system, and I'm gonna say it, this is the best stealth system in the entire franchise, by a country mile. It is good, it is deep, and it just works. And to add to that, the music. Now in my opinion, I honestly cannot think of a single game where Ubisoft missed the mark with music, especially in the mainline Assassin's Creed games. And that trend has continued here. And in quite some fashion. The mix of Arabic music with EDM was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. But that is where the buck stops. And now I know I shouldn't expect much from parkour in a game derived from Valhalla, which had the worst iteration of parkour in the series. But as a parkour enthusiast who has climbed a total of maybe 5 buildings, a few dozen trees, and skipped through about 15-20 railings, in my entire life, I do enjoy the movement system of Assassin's Creed. But there has always been a conscious effort from the devs to streamline the system, taking more and more control away from the player and to automate the something cool that you can do. But parkour is all about control, which you definitely do not have in Mirage. Are you running in a straight line? The game will auto-adjust your jumps and shorten your recovery time. Do you literally want to do anything else? Well, there's a 2 out of 10 chance maybe that a side eject might happen, maybe. And those are the dumb post-Unity side ejects, not the actual useful ones that can carry your momentum and gain height. While people might say that this is enough for most people, and I honestly agree. But the thing I don't agree is that I do not see the point of not having advanced moves. If people want to tell me that Assassin Focus is something I can choose not to use, well then a functional side eject is something a casual user might not want, but I definitely want to use it. In a world so well built for parkour, we have so many places that are screaming for side ejects. But they are about as available as a gamer girlfriend from a different city that most gamers say they have. Moving on from that, we again move to the story because we have to talk about it. Of all the characters presented to us, Basim and Nehal are the obvious standouts. As I've said before, Roshan is criminally underused. And other than that, I honestly could not tell you about the others. Flawed comes to mind, but honestly that might be because he's the one who appears the most after Basim, who is literally on screen the whole time. And that's it. Most Order members have the personality of a wet napkin and the motivations of a mustache-twirling bad guy. Now it would seem as if Crawford Sturrock himself has returned to the franchise. But for all its flaws, everything that this game does do, it manages to hit a high. Everything here seems carefully placed, everything is properly designed, and every mechanic that they did implement fulfills its purpose. Even the story in some ways fulfills its purpose, as in the end, the objective was for a certain someone to meet Basim, and we do get that. It is difficult to describe why this game feels so great. Yes, even like the 1,000 words that I've used so far are not enough. Assassin's Creed Origins is a good example of what I'm talking about. It wasn't the best. It has a lot of flaws, doesn't do a lot of things right. But somehow, it always stands out. It has that something special. Well, Mirage has that something special. A soul. Something sorely lacking in this era of maximum profit, maximum coverage, and maximum player engagement. Just a well-made game which understands its audience and tries its best to deliver for them. And for that, I appreciate Mirage and the people who make it. Now, all that said, what do you guys think? Did you play the game? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Do let me know down in the comments below. Once again, like the video if you like it and subscribe for more. And I will leave you guys in peace.